Hello and welcome into this edition of the Bucs Daily MinuteCast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. So when you're using your podcatcher of choice, look up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers MinuteCast and hit that follow or subscribe button. That way you will know when the new podcasts are available. This podcast is also available on the Bucs Report, and you can see the video on YouTube and is also available wherever you get your audio podcasts. My name is Dan Holman. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. So in this edition of the Bucs Daily MinuteCast, the cuts are starting to come in. And some of them are a bit surprising. I know that this is a bit earlier in the day, and there is always the possibility that more cuts will come in. But I'm going to get you up to speed with what is going on right now. And this is just what was going on online. They were saying, rarely seen a rookie make more plays consistently. It comes down to this. The Bucs scouts recommended him. Organization signed him. Would you rather play against him? And then they show a video package of him, and they're talking about Thompkins. And not really sure what they were thinking when they were talking about getting rid of him or they're releasing him. He was one of the players that the Bucs were high on, and I'm kind of just wondering personally, how many of these cuts did Tom Brady have a hand in? I saw an interesting comment by Rick Stroud on Twitter where he said that Tom Brady rarely likes to buy green bananas, and if you can read into what that means is that Tom Brady likes to go with a proven commodity. He wants to go with a winner, and it's going to be interesting once we see the final roster, who is going to end up being on this team. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of unproven commodities out there. I think it's going to be, guys that he's thrown passes to and make catches consistently. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't have said this earlier. I know some things could change between now and then, but I would not be surprised now if Scotty Miller finds a spot on this team. And another player I'm talking about that I think that Tom Brady probably had his hand in, Scooter, the fastest guy in the team. He knows that when Tom Brady airs it out down the field, that Scotty Miller can make the catches most of the time. Most iconically, if you remember the game against the Green Bay Packers, that's the one that always stands out to me. Just tremendous speed. I remember watching that with my son, and he aired it out. I'm like, there's no way he's going to catch it. And oh my God, he caught that. So just so many great moments for me with Scotty Miller. And it's not just that one play. He's a guy that has a really great attitude. He's got a will to win, and he's willing to put in his time. Bucs have traded Grant Stewart and a 7th-round pick in 2023 to the Colts for their 6th-round pick in 2023. And this one is a bit surprising to me. And, just kind of doing some research online. If you think about it, he had some passes thrown to him that were dropped that he probably should have caught. Confirming here that the Bucs have released wide receiver Tyler Johnson, and that was one of the guys out there that a lot of the beat writers for the Bucs were high on. Like this guy is amazing, and he played really well in mini camps throughout the summer, and he played well, just right here as we head into the season in practice. But for whatever reason, he did not find a spot on this team. Kind of an interesting move there because Tyler Johnson was one of the big ones, like I talked about. And then the big one that I alluded to earlier in the podcast here, the Bucs have released 2 more undrafted wide receivers in Thompkins and Kalen Geiger. Geiger, another interesting one here, but they got to trim this lineup down to make it under the roster and, put the best players out on the field, like Spytech likes to say. I know that some people kind of almost gain, some sort of attachment to some of these players, but at the end of the day, they want to have the best players on the field that is going to put the Bucs in a position to win. Bucs are releasing Logan Ryan today. However, he's not subject to waivers and could re-sign with the team once a roster spot is cleared. The Bucs will have a spot later Wednesday when they move Ryan Jensen to the PUP list. And Ryan Jensen, that's a tough one for me. That's a tough pill to swallow. And I think it's a tough pill to swallow for Tom Brady as well, because this was his dream team, and Jensen was part of that. And now, Leverett or Hainsey or whoever ends up being center, it's going to be an unproven commodity anyway. They were talking about recalling Johnson dropping a pass or two from Tom Brady in the playoffs against the Rams. Was that a factor in the move today? And then Rick Stroud was saying, sure, it's whomever Tom trusts. He dropped the first pass Saturday versus the Colts. Who do you think is choosing wide receivers to throw to this year's? That's a pretty experienced core. And that is talking about what I was talking about in the top of the show there, that Tom Brady does not like to buy green bananas. So he doesn't want to get invested in unproven commodities. Unproven commodities. He wants to go with a proven winner, and that's going to be your Godwin, your Evans. He's not going to waste his time. He's got Julio Jones on Gage out there. He doesn't need to waste his time with these guys that don't, have a really solid track record. All right. And then in some other news here, Ryan Succop beats out Jose Borregales for the kicking job. And, Borregales was one of the guys that was wowing everyone in practice and in the preseason. And one of the comments they made is that if Borregales ever gets cut loose, there is going to be a team that scoops him up. That was before he missed that game-winning kick that he missed. If he would have got the kick, they would have won the game ostensibly there. So, but Borregales and the Bucs go with Succop. I do think it's a good move. I've always liked him. I thought he did a good job. I think that sometimes they just try to insert some competition there to make it a little bit more interesting. This story in the Bucs Wire, they're talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are sticking with the veteran when it comes to their kicking duties for the 2022 season. Jose Borregales is being waived per the Athletic's Greg Auman, which gives this year's kicking job to Ryan Succop for the third year in a row. And I say great move. Succop was a solid and consistent for the Bucs throughout their Super Bowl run in 2020, but his numbers dipped a bit last season. And I think that ultimately that is why they brought Borregales in, is kind of, who's going to rise to the top? Who's the cream that's going to rise to the top? Even so, he was strong throughout training camp in the preseason, while Borregales missed a pair of long field goals in the exhibition games. This is the second year in which Succop has beaten out Borregales for the job. Don't be surprised if the latter ends up back on the Tampa Bay practice squad again, assuming he clears waivers. And I gotta say, I would be surprised if he clears waivers. I think that he had that one fluky field goal that he missed, but I think that he did a good job for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I would be most surprised if someone doesn't scoop him up. And then in some other news here, Bills cut former tight end O.J. Howard. This is in the Bucs Wire as well. They talk about it. And O.J. Howard, if you remember, top draft pick. The Bucs were high on him. He suffered, a couple injuries that kind of derailed his development in his future. And the interesting thing about this move is that the Bills are going to eat a bunch of his salary to get rid of him. So what is the story there? The Buffalo Bills have released former Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end O.J. Howard per multiple reports. Howard, the number 19 overall pick by the Bucs in the 2017 NFL Draft, signed a one-year deal with the Bills in free agency, most of which was guaranteed. Ouch. That is a tough money pill to swallow for the Bills. Even with his release, the Bucs are still expected to receive a seventh-round compensatory pick in the 2023 NFL Draft for losing him in free agency this offseason. Despite the loss of Rob Gronkowski to retirement, the Bucs are unlikely to pursue a reunion with Howard, having signed veteran Kyle Rudolph and drafted a pair of promising rookies in Cade Otton and Cole Keft. And I concur with that. I would say that would be a questionable move for the Bucs to do something like that. All right, so after the break, we are going to talk a little bit about Bruce Arians, and Greg Auman talks to him and he weighs in on how he thinks the Bucs are doing. We'll talk about that after the break. Welcome back into this edition of the Bucs Daily MinuteCast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. In this edition, we are talking about the many cuts that are taking place on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Some of them surprising, some of them not so surprising, but ultimately it is going to be the best lineup according to a Bucs and company as they go forward. So this is a Q&A with Bruce Arians. on Tom Brady's leave, his health, and more. And this was an interesting article in The Athletic. They talk about, first off, how is your health? Have you lost significant weight since last season? And I'm sure the retirement schedule helps. And Bruce Arians is still a guy that plays an integral role on the team. He didn't retire. He didn't hang it up. I just think that he just needed to step away, knowing that he wasn't going to be able to be a coach on the day-to-day. He says, I feel fantastic. I'm doing everything the doctors say, and I got a good team. I'm keeping the weight down and feeling really good. He asked him, when we talked to you in Indy at the combine, even before retirement, you said you were down 52 pounds, which is remarkable. He says, I'm still down 45. I slipped back a little bit, but I feel so much better. It's diet and exercise. I tore my Achilles during the exercise, so that's where I got a little back. That was the medicines that we're doing now. And, Bruce Arians was a guy that had questionable health. And I think that it was ultimately the good, thing for the Bucs to do to find a coach in Todd Bowles to fill in, because, Bruce Arians, as you say, had to drive around on a cart and everything all the time. So it is good that that they were able to find a head coach that they trust. And one of the other questions, and you think the locker room understands why he needs time away, knowing how much he doesn't like missing the place. And talking about Tom Brady, he says there's no doubt everybody in there knows he has a different lifestyle than they do, and they understand it and are happy that he's back. And, the thing about Tom Brady for me is something's wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a problem with his wife. I don't know if it's a problem with his parents' health, which, has kind of been debunked on different beat writers for the Bucs. Something is wrong. I don't know if we'll ever know, but, you can kind of tell that he's not his calm, cool, collected self that he normally is. One of the other questions here, you've watched the team for the past month since the start of camp. Without giving too much away, who has impressed you? He says that Jalen Darden made great strides in the spring and camp. I think all of the draft picks, Cade Otton has really showed me what I thought he'd do as a blocker, and Cole Keft. Both young tight ends have been very impressive. Running backs, Rachaad White is everything I hoped he'd be. The draft guys nailed it, and Rachaad White is a pleasant surprise. And even some tougher questions that need to be answered at the running back position with Keyshawn Vaughn and Giovanni Bernard and Fournette. Who is going to be the running back core for the Bucs? Is there anything back that White reminds you of? We've heard a lot of lofty comparisons. He says he looks like Edgar and James, who he coached with the Colts as a rookie. He's a little bit taller, but the same body type, great patience and burst, longtime NFL coach, and now Bucs consultant Tom Moore and I were both out there one day and said, he looks just like Edge. And Tom said, looks just like him. He has the patience you can't teach, and his hands are unbelievable. And then he just goes on to talk about the different acquisitions. You guys have really good depth at the receiver this year, adding Russell Gage and Julio Jones, and a strong group of undrafted rookies. All three rookies were waived Tuesday, and third-year pro Tyler Johnson won't make the cut either. Arians goes on to say, that's the best group of young guys I've been around in my time. They just happen to be butting up against veteran players. It's a great problem to have. So, some great questions and more cuts that will most likely need to be made in the upcoming days. But that is the most up-to-date information that I have for you right now about your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers MinuteCast. I'm so glad you decided to join me today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.